Not in someplace else. Okay, vino Adonai Eloheinu alinu ma'aseh adenu konani ma'aseh adenu koneu. Just me from the pocket, in the front pocket of my bag is in my bag. I want to do some dedications. The front pocket, yeah. There's a piece of paper. Just take that out. There you go.
Take some of the.
Okay. First, I want to thank Pamela and Prosper Abatbul for graciously opening up their home to Ashir Torah this morning in Shaare Orah. I'd like to dedicate the Shir Le'ilun Nishmat Sarah Tziva Bat Dover Ruach Adonai Tenichene Began Eden V'gam Nefesh Esther Bat Victoria Reina Ruach Adonai Tenichene Began Eden V'gam Nefesh Chaya Bat Rezel Yenta Ruach Adonai Tenichene Began Eden V'gam Nefesh Uri Ben Hasiba Ruach Adonai Tenichene Began Eden V'gam Nefesh Yosef Chaim Ben Yonah Ruach Adonai Tenichene Began Eden V'gam Nefesh Mazal Tov Bat Estel Ruach Adonai Tenichene Began Eden V'gam Nefesh Vicky Bat Rachel V'gam Silvan Bat Rachel Ruach Adonai Tenichene Began Eden V'gam Chaya Bat Sarah Ruach Adonai Tenichene Began Eden V'gam Nefesh Morad Ben Tzivia V'gam Nefesh Rabbi Meir Ben Tzivia Ruach Adonai Tenichem Began Eden Le'avdil Ben Emetim L'Chaim, to separate from the dead for the living. Refuah Shlema for Esther Simin Bat Sharapat El Narafan Allah El Narafan Allah El Narafan Allah V'gam Nilufat Leah Bat Felora Esther El Narafan Allah El Narafan Allah El Narafan Allah V'gam Gail Spatz Kusher El Narafan Allah El Narafan Allah El Narafan Allah. Okay, by the way, the Torah that raises the soul more than any other Torah is the Torah we're discussing right now. Okay, Torah Shebichtav is very good. Oral Torah is a little better. Kabbalah, which is the hidden Torah, is the best. And why is that? Why is what we're studying here the best?
Is this a type of oral Torah?
It says, but why is this better than the revealed Torah to study to raise the neshama?
Because what you hide is usually something that you revere the most.
Okay, good. Something hidden. Good.
The most special.
This also develops something we discussed yesterday called Yirat Shamayim, which needs constant development. A person should never say, well, I've already arrived, that's it. Okay, no. Yirat Shamayim needs to be developed over the course of many, many years and always going more and more Yirat Shamayim. This helps to bring that. But there's another reason. When your neshama tonight, when you go to sleep, goes to the Shamayim, they're going to ask your neshama, what Torah did you study? Now, let's say Baruch Hashem, I went to Rabbi Goldberg's class, wonderful class, and the class was about basar b'chalav, meat and milk, what you can eat together, how you do it. In the Shamayim, that's important, but not. Why? Because in the Shamayim, there's no meat, there's no milk. Right? You're talking about Isur v'heter. You're talking about things that are... So the Nigla Torah deals in the physical world, almost completely, yes? So therefore, while it's important in the Shamayim, we understand that it's not as important as what we're studying, because the Neshamat and the Shamayim also need to know this also. And in fact, the real answer, the Gaon of Vilna says, is a person who doesn't understand the secret, the sod, doesn't understand the peshat. You think the pesukim of the Torah are as they are, right? And I understand the simple meaning. If you don't understand the sod, you do not understand the simple meaning, because the sod is what gives that meaning behind. Without that, you're missing everything. And that goes the same thing for the Mishnah, and that goes the same thing for all the halachot. There are multiple, there's the halacha itself, basar b'chalav, but then there's what's behind basar b'chalav from a spiritual point of view, and that has value in the Shamayim also. Okay? So I'm reading this book. Basically is a book that I first found when I was 19 years old, a small little book in Mea Shearim. I knew it was a Kabbalah book right away, because in the olden days, the boy would have big letters and small letters, bold and not small, right? I bought it, And I tried to learn it, was unsuccessful. It took me about 35 years to get to the point where I was able to understand it when this Perush came out. This Perush is amazing. And what he does, this explanation brings on the bottom, so you have Rabbi Yosef Gikatilya's book on the top, and then on the bottom he brings Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato, the Ramchal, he brings the Gaon Mivilna, he brings many Chachamim so we can give basically more detail to what's being discussed on top. Okay?
Who is he real quick? The publisher?
What?
The author.
The author of this book, Bernstein. His name is Epstein, sorry. Okay, so he took the book, because the book itself, and when you read the Perush on the bottom, it gives you understanding of what he's talking about, but because when the Rishonim wrote their books, especially Kabbalah books, they wrote it encrypted, in code. Now, today we don't have to, we just basically encrypt it, which means we give it looks a bunch of nonsense, correct? There's a bunch of nonsense. And then if you have the key, what happens? You type the key in, and then it decrypts the message and you can read it, right? Well, they didn't have that in the Middle Ages. So when they published a book and they were going to put it in printing, you would write a book, you'd have to put it in a way you didn't want people who are not worthy or could not understand it or make big mistakes. You didn't want them to understand what's going on. So you put it in a way that was a hidden way with only headings, and only someone who had the keys was able to understand. That's why the Ramban, his Kabbalistic interpretations, if you just read it at face value, you cannot understand it unless you have the keys. This book contains the keys, but this book is also written in a hidden way. The reason why the Arizal said that this book and the Ramban's Perush is those are the only books that were written clearly enough that if a person has the keys, they're less likely to make mistakes. Other books by the other Rishonim were also hidden, right? But there's a risk because of their style wasn't able to be written properly. They didn't write as well. Therefore, there's a risk the person's going to make mistakes. Okay? We see another example, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Right? He's the author of the Zohar, correct? Who is his teacher?
Rabbi Akiva.
Rabbi Akiva. Why didn't Rabbi Akiva write the Zohar?
He didn't have the ability to actually do it in a way where it's hidden and yet revealed.
Doesn't mean Rabbi Akiva didn't know it, but it's one thing to know it. It's another thing to be able to write it, to put it in an organized thought. The rabbis for many years did not write the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi wrote the Mishnah. There's various reasons why he took upon himself that sin to write down the Mishnah. And one of the, he had because it's Torah She'Ba'al Peh. What does Ba'al Peh mean? Right? So he had his reasoning. It was very good reasoning, okay? But why him? Why no one else? Why none of his contemporaries? Because he had the ability to organize it in a way that would be understandable. Look at the Rambam. You study the Yad, which is his book of halakha. There is no one who's greater organizational skills than the Rambam, in my personal opinion. No one. Everything is organized. There are people who learn out just based on how he organized things, how he's thinking. Anyway, so when we come over here, so Rabbi Yosef Gikatil is talking about a very esoteric topic. So he writes it in a very short way, okay? And that's what the bottom comes to explain. A lot of times, in order to understand this book properly, you have to first read the whole book and then read it again. Because what's happening as the book is uncovering, it's repeating what's said before and then developing it more. So when a person gets to the end, it clarifies what's in the beginning, like many great novelists, like Harry Potter. What makes Harry Potter such an amazing book? That you don't understand what's going on in the first book until you read the seventh. Which means this woman had the beginning to the end in her mind. I mean, it's an incredible thing, right? There are certain authors that have that ability. Again, lahavdil, this is not the same, but that's the same thing here. These rabbis wrote these books in a way that the goal is for you to finish the book and then restart it again. Okay, let's go inside. So now we're talking about the concept of a brit. We discussed this last week in last week's class, Thursday's class. The concept of a covenant. What is a covenant? It's a deal. It's a contract. Okay. And what is required for there to be a covenant? For there to be a covenant, there has to be something given over from one to the other. That's what the rabbi said in the bottom. What the Rabbi Gikatilia said. So an example: the Torah is a covenant. It's a brit. Why? Because it was given by God to Klal Yisrael. To what point was it given? Lo b'shamayim hi. Which means if I want to see a halachic answer and I can go talk to the prophet or talk to the rabbi, who do I talk to? Talk to the rabbi. Talking to the prophet doesn't help me because through prophecy we cannot reveal halacha. Why? Lo b'shamayim hi. Once the Torah was given to Klal Yisrael, it was given to Klal Yisrael, which means we then need to learn it and figure out what to do. We can't ask the prophet. Of course, one exception being Moses. Okay, so we see the brit requires something to be given over. Shabbat is called a brit. Why is Shabbat a brit? What does the Gemara say? Moses came up and God said, there is a beautiful treasure that I have in my treasure house. It's called Shabbat, and I want to give it to the Jewish people. Go tell them. So we see the Shabbat is a brit. Why? Because it has a concept of something being given over. And vice versa. When we have a brit, we give something to God. So take a brit milah. What's a brit milah? We give something to God. It's called the Orah. We take it off. That's the idea. So brit requires two things to be given. It's sort of like the idea when you buy chametz, when you sell your chametz on Pesach. There's something called the kinyan sudar. What is a kinyan sudar? Interesting. Sudar. What is sudar? What does the word sudar? What word does it look? Sudar. Don't read the vav as a u. Read it as a v. Sveder. Which means a sudar is a scarf. It's a scarf that people wore. So they would take the scarf off, and that was a symbol of the kinyan. So sweater comes from the word sudar, sweder, because the vav, according to Iraqis and others, is not pronounced as a v, it's pronounced as a w. Sweater, sudar, sudar. That's how it would have been pronounced. Anyway, because anything of value, okay, that's how, if I want to make a deal with you, let's say I'm going to give you something that's like in the air. I'm going to sell you all my chametz. Yeah. Well, you have to have something to show that transaction. That's called kinyan sudar. You can take whatever you want, but people would take what they have. So if you go to Rabbi Goldberg, he's going to take a pen, or he's going to take something like, right, whatever. It has to be something that has a value, and that's the symbol of the contract. That's the symbol. So we understand that the Shabbat, the symbol of that God gave us the Shabbat, and what do we give back to Hashem? We don't do melacha. That's the concept of a covenant. Each one giving something to the other. Okay? We good? That's what we discussed last week. Okay, now, so it talks about Brit HaLashon. What is Brit HaLashon? We discussed there are 3 levels of Brit. The first one, the highest one, is Brit HaLashon. What is that? Speech. Why is that? Because what is the purpose of speech? No. Well, okay. Tell me right now what I'm thinking.
5.
You have no idea. Okay? You have no idea. How do you know what I'm thinking?
You transmit.
When I talk, right? So speech is a way of taking something that is hidden from the world everywhere else, because no one can know your thoughts except for you, right? And through this speech, what you're doing is you're bringing what's the thoughts into the world. You're sharing what's inside your thoughts into the world. That could be good, that could be bad, either way. So that's the same idea is a brit, but it's a high level because it's something that is hidden that is then revealed through speech, okay? And brit hasfatayim, the brit of the lips. Okay, now it's a big thing. Why are they making an exception between lips and lashon? Lashon in Hebrew is tongue, and lips are lips, sfatayim. Why are we making that distinction?
Different words used. The lip words and then the
Not words,
letters.
letters.
The,
Every Hebrew letter, just like we have Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dal, He, Vav, can be divided phonetically. What do I mean by that? I'll take example. Dat lanat. Dalet, Taf, Lamed, Nun, Peh. What do they all have in common? Just say Dat lanat.
Everything with the tongue.
But where is your tongue? Right behind your teeth, touching the hard palate. Dat lanat, which means all those letters basically are a family because phonetically they're said at a certain place inside the mouth. Remember, Hebrew is Lashon HaKodesh, the holy tongue. There's a reason why Hebrew is a holy tongue. I'll give you another example. Bumap, Bet, Vav, Me, lips, Sfatayim. So all speech is obviously air coming from the larynx, and obviously the larynx do, but the way you cut the letters is through the mouth, the lips, the back of the throat. Aleph, that's in the back. Het, that's in the back. Ayin, that's in the back. He, that's in the back. That's how you know the pronunciation of the Hebrew letters. How do you know that a taf without a dagesh is not a saf? Because phonetically, it's wrong. There's a zas sheraf, that's another phonetic combination. Zayin, shin, samach, sin, resh, right? All those are the zas sherats. They're all said in the same place, right? So therefore, you can't have a situation where a letter with a dagesh or without a dagesh changes its place. That is not Hebrew. Hebrew. That's not Hebrew. That's influence of Gentile languages on Hebrew speaking.
So tav with dagesh
A
is what?
taf and a thaf.
Temanim.
So the temanim are very particular. So think about the taf and the thaf. Same place. So without a dagesh, it's a th. Okay, take a gimel. Gimel. There's a gimel and there's a chimel. That's in the same place. The j is not exactly in the same place. So the temanim may be mistaken. J. With a dagesh, they say a j, and without a dagesh, they say a g or re. But it's not. What's more proper? G. That's a rimel. Unlike the Hebrew, the Israelis, they use a resh. That is wrong. This is not Hebrew. Okay? The resh of Hebrew is like the Spanish r. It's a rolling R. So it's, and how do you know? Because resh is where zashratz. It's in that place. Okay?
So Ashkenazim, when they change from tav to tet, so how they do?
They say stuff.
And they do, listen, they have their tradition. That's how they speak Hebrew, kol hakavod. But if you're going back to the original, going back to how it was on Har Sinai, there was no saf. Hayom haras olam. No, absolutely not. Okay? There's no saf. Okay? You go back to the original, and where what I just said is mentioned. What Sefer mentions what I'm talking about the phonetic Okay, well, I'm looking for something a little earlier than the Mishnah Berurah.
I was gonna go back later.
Let's go back earlier. Let's go back very early. Good, very good. Oh, is this a woman who knows her stuff? Sefer Yetzirah, written by Avraham Avinu.
You're talking about you're talking with Kabbalistics.
I see.
Kabbalistics.
Baruch Hashem. So anyway, so Sefer Yetzirah discusses many things. One of the things it discusses is all the phonetic relationships between the letters. And that's how you know the proper pronunciation of the letters based on where they're fitting phonetically. So we're talking about here the Brit HaLashon and the Brit HaSfatayim. So we understand the Lashon, the tongue, and the lips is what makes almost all the letters with the exception of the Gronit letters. Those are made by the back of the throat. Yes?
So the one thing I never understood was they also classify the letters, maybe I'm wrong, I'm not getting this, with imaot and abaot letters. I don't know, did you? Anyways,
I don't remember that. If you send me that afterwards, I'll look it up and we'll talk about it. Okay?
So Moshe Rabbeinu wrote that book?
No,
So what?
Avraham Avinu.
Abraham.
It's Miyuchas LaAvraham Avinu. Okay? All right. By the way, Rashi says that clearly. So even for the Ashkenazim who don't like Kabbalistic books, okay, when it says that Betzalel, who was the artisan of the Mishkan, right? What does it say about Betzalel? That he was filled with the Ruach of Chokhmah, Binah, V'Dat, right? So if you look in the Talmud, when it's discussing these Pesukim in Masechet Chagiga, which is Tractate Chagiga, it discusses here what does it mean Betzalel? It says Betzalel was able to know the letters that God used to create the world, which means the Mishkan is really an idea of creation of the world. It's like the world is contained within the Mishkan. We can talk about that another time, okay? So Betzalel, because he knew, and how did God create the world? Ma'amarot in what language? Hebrew. So it means Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh was used to create the world. So what we're talking about here is the method through which God created the world, which means that if a person knows how to combine letters, they can create a world. That's called Kabbalah Ma'asit, that we don't touch. We don't touch that, okay? That's dangerous. No, forget it. There are people who've done it, okay? I don't know what Yeshka did, what he didn't do. I don't know what he did, what he didn't do. Eifel Katuv. Where's that written?
This is how he heals.
Where's it written? It's all their stories.
How he heals the people.
Who prove to me he existed?
No, but he heals people.
How do you know he heals people?
That's what they started.
So we believe them?
I don't believe him.
Okay, that's it. So
he heals people.
I don't think he healed anybody.
No.
Yeah, he probably didn't exist.
Okay, and if he existed, okay, he was insignificant.
Rabbi,
Like I said yesterday. Why?
we had
Because
Sharabi over here.
Josephus
Yeah.
did not discuss him at all.
Not at all. And he discussed everything.
And he discussed everything. So if he was so significant,
Talk about-
the Gemara talks about a person whose name is Yeshu, but it may not be the same person. You know, Yeshu is not an uncommon name, okay? And the Gemara is clearly not talking about the Yeshu we think about because he was a student of Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachia, who was in about 130. So it's too early. Early,
130
BC.
BC. Yeah. No.
We had a rabbi.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Sharabi,
Yeah.
that used to use the names.
All right.
I'm telling you, he used to do things with names and stuff like that, and it works.
Which rabbi?
Rabbi Shalom.
All right.
You remember
Rav
Rabbi?
Kaduri.
Look at the-
Okay, not for regular guys. Let's just it's off topic. For regular people, we do not touch that.
No, you-
So what?
The only Kabbalah we touch, there are 3 levels of Kabbalah. Just like there are 3 levels of Torah, right? There's 3 levels of Kabbalah. There is the Kabbalah of thought, there's the Kabbalah of speech, and there's the Kabbalah of action. Similar in mitzvot, we have action, the actual mitzvah itself. Then there's the bracha, which is the speech. And then there's the kavanah, which is the thought. Which is the highest level regarding action mitzvot? The kavanah. Right? The lowest level is the action. The next higher level is the speech. And the higher level is the kavanah. Why? Because what separates animals have action. A lion eats when he's hungry. He does shechita, or he kills. That's his action, but that's his instinct. That's low level. Speech brings it to human. Only human beings, Gentiles and Jews, have the ability to communicate properly together in ways with 70 languages. So speech makes it from being an animal action into a human action. And what does kavanah do? Kavanah brings it to a Jewish action. Because only we have the kavanah l'shem kusha b'ruchu shkintei. They don't have a clue about that. Okay, so therefore we see in maasim and actions, the lowest level is the action, the next higher level is the speech, and the highest level is the thought. Because everything in the technically is reversed, it's the opposite in the Kabbalah. The lowest level of the Kabbalah is the thought. which is what we're doing now. The philosophy, the thought about the Kabbalah, what the different meanings are, the names. The next higher level is the speech. And there's only one place that we're allowed to have Kabbalah in speech. That's called tefillah. When we pray, and we, not with the art scroll, when we get a different Siddur that has neshama, like Avodat Hashem, or the different Siddurim we have, right? You look in the small print. That small print is the how the tefillah, that's the speech. That's where tefillah becomes the Kabbalistic part of it, yes? But the highest level of Kabbalah is the ma'aseh, which is the exact opposite of in the world. Because we understand there's a Gemara that talks about, we discussed this previously a couple of weeks ago, a rabbi went to the Shamayim, and then he came back to the Aretz, he came back to the land, and they say, Rabbi, what did you see? What was his answer? Olam hafuch ra'iti. I saw a world upside down. Okay? The real answer is this world is upside down. That world is right side up, meaning that in this world, the tree, the roots are on the bottom, the trunk, and then the leaves, right? The tree gets sustenance from the ground through the water, and it grows anti-gravity, right? Roots are on the bottom. In the spiritual world, there's also the concept of a tree. It's not a physical tree, it's a spiritual tree. But in the spiritual world, the roots are high, the trunk is down, and the leaves and the branches are on the bottom. Okay?
Our eyes see things properly, but our brain flips it around.
And your eyes see things properly, your brain flips it over. On the retina, you see everything upside down. Olam hafuch ra'iti. Okay? But everything we have to recognize. So they understand that. So that's why the Kabbalah saw the spiritual world is the mirror image of the physical world. Not physically, of course, but from a spiritual. So the concepts are mirror image, but upside down. Or more properly, we are the mirror image of the spiritual world, and we are upside down. Okay? Okay. Halashon hu keneged hayesod. He says the lashon, the tongue, is keneged the yesod. Hamikasher ben asfirot. What is the purpose of the yesod? The yesod makes a connection between the sfirot. All the sfirot, our responsibility is to make them connected. We'll see how he develops this. Uben kol chekei motzaot hapeh. And between all of what comes out of the mouth is the tongue, right? No tongue, no speech. Yes. Kamo should be air be pardes, like explained in the pardes. What's the pardes? What sefer is he talking about? Pardes Rimonim. Pardes Rimonim is a book written by Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, Zichron Tzadik Livracha, and Rabbi Moshe Cordovero is the teacher of the Ari. But even though the Ari is his student, the Ari took the Kabbalah to a level much higher than his teacher did. Okay. Mashi anu omrim shamalchut peh. What do we say? Where do we say malchut is peh? The malchut is the mouth. Where do we say that? Where is that from, Habibi? Very good. Where are you quoting that from? It's in the Siddur. Where are you quoting it from? Patach Eliyahu. Patach Eliyahu is from the Tikkunei Zohar. That's correct. Okay? So Patach Eliyahu is a section of the Tikkunei Zohar. Okay? It's a part of the Zohar, shall we say. And that basically, in a very short couple of paragraphs, summarizes the entire Kabbalistic system. And that's why it says, when we ask ourselves, how when we pray, sometimes Hashem's not listening on tefillot. You know why? First of all, he's not listening sometimes because we don't know the keys. We don't know the names. This book is going to help you with that, right? But also, we didn't properly prepare ourselves. What does it say in the Talmud about the Chasidim Rishonim? Not Chasidim with Bekesha and Streimel and Avini Malkeni. That's not the Chasidim that's being discussed.
Our prep and our post.
The pious ones. What is a Chasid? What's the difference between a tzaddik, a Chasid, and a kadosh? This is Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato from Mesilat Yesharim. What is it, tzaddik?
Does everything according to the
Does everything exactly what God commands. Who's the example we have in the Torah that brings this? Noach. Noach it's tzaddik, tamim haya, bedorotav et Elohim italech Noach. What made Noach a tzaddik? He followed God. Whatever God told him to do, he did to the letter of the law. That's Noach. Did God ask Noach to pray for the people? No. Therefore, Noach doesn't pray for the people. That's a tzaddik. Tzaddik is someone who does exactly what the law says. What's a chassid? Lifnim mishurat hadin. Does above and beyond what the law requires. He does extra. But there's a danger to doing extra. What's the danger? No.
The dog.
The danger to doing extra is you don't want to have extra here and compromise someplace else. Sometimes we do extra here, but we're compromising another place. In order to be a chassid, a person has to be Talmid Chacham. Why? En Am Haaretz Chassid. Why? Because in order to be a chassid, you have to know the halacha. You have to know where there is room to do extra here that's not going to sacrifice someplace else. That's what Pirkei Avot says. En bur yirechet. A bur is a person who has no Torah at all, cannot be fearful of sin because he's got no Torah. Now, a chassid, an Am Haaretz, is someone who has Torah shbichtav, written Torah, but not oral Torah. He can't be chassid. Why? Because he doesn't know the oral law. Therefore, he's going to compromise here and he's going to do extra here. So a chassid has to be, it's a higher level. It's someone who does above and beyond what's asked. What's kadosh? That's higher.
Simplify.
What's kadosh?
The one
Separate, I get it. But what makes the difference? Why is a kadosh higher than a chassid?
is practice. The practice.
I'm all ears. I'm listening.
Practice is perfect. Whatever he does all the combinations.
Okay, what is that? Let's understand that a little bit more.
Is there something here that has to do with his mastery over the Yetzer Hara?
Sort of. Everybody, tzaddik has to master the Yetzer Hara, though he's in trouble, then he's Rasha. Right? So if you look in the Torah, we have a parasha called Kedoshim. What does Kedoshim say? Kedoshim to you, ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. Kedoshim to you, you should be kadosh. Why? Because God is kadosh. Okay? So now Rashi, what does Rashi say? What does it mean to be kadosh? Rashi says, very simple, separating from illicit sexual relations. That makes a person kadosh. Where does Rashi learn that from? What's right before kadoshim? The end of Acharei Mot. What's discussed in the end of Acharei Mot? The arayot, all the forbidden relations. So Rashi says and Rashi says anytime you see the word kadoshim, it has to do with poresh min ha'arayot, separating from sexual indiscretion. That's Rashi. Any type of your eyes, keeping your eyes, right? The shovavim, when the shovavim now, protecting your eyes from seeing things they shouldn't see. Yes? All these ideas, now, that's Rashi. The Ramban doesn't like it. Because the Ramban's coming from a different perspective. What's his perspective? He says, a person who does not commit arayot, he's called a tzaddik. If a person succumbs to arayot, he's rasha. Right? Yosef is called a tzaddik. Why is Yosef called a tzaddik? Because he's separated he didn't go with the wife of Potiphar. So Rambam says, no, it's not. It's higher. Tzaddik is someone who's not involved in arayot. What is a kadosh? Ramban says, the Torah gives you, even though it appears that the Torah doesn't allow you to do anything, it gives you a lot of flexibility. A lot of things are permitted in the Torah. Okay? For instance, is there any restriction for a person to have meat every single day? Forget about the health part of it. Is there a restriction to have meat every single day?
Well,
There's no restriction. Now let's think about that. Nowadays, it's not a big deal. We go to the Grove. The meat is contained within a plastic. We don't have to touch it even until we take it out of the plastic and we put it in the pot, right? It's all like packaged and easy. Now go back 400 years. Well, you didn't go to the grove to get your meat. What happened is you had some animals in the whatever, and it was time to eat, the animal's getting old or whatever, a situation. You called the shochet, which means in order to get the meat, you were basically killing an animal, the blood, the whole shebang. It was now we've sterilized it to a point, well, okay, we're gonna have ourselves a steak. It's great. But you understand where the steak is coming from, then some people don't want to eat meat. So understand there's a certain level of cruelty in having meat every single day, right? Especially in the olden days when they had to do shechita and all that kind of stuff, right? So Ramban says, what is considered to be someone who's kadosh? The Torah permits you to have meat every single day, but you say to yourself, not because of health reasons, I only going to have meat once a week on Shabbat. Now you've taken something that is permitted and making it for you forbidden, not for anybody else, for you forbidden. That's called kadosh. That's Ramban. Huh?
תלוי מה, only in meat, okay, fine.
Whatever.
Some things that you cannot, איך אומרים, להגביל את עצמך בדברים שאתה לא...
Okay, Shovavim. Okay, let's take the Shovavim, since we're starting the Shovavim this week, yes? Why is a person who does a Shovavim called Kadosh? Holy. Shovavim is a fasting on Monday and Thursday between 6 parashot. Shmot, Va'era, Bo, Beshalach, Mishpatim. Yitro, Mishpatim. Okay, we'll see. Shovavim. And that's basically the parashot, the 6 parashot that start off Shmot. Now, it just happens to be they're always in the winter, so it's easy because you start the fast at dawn and you finish at stars come out. It's not a 24-hour, 25-hour fast, right? So it happens to be it's easier. Why in the winter time? Because the winter time is, it's a time for making all kinds of mistakes when people are home all the time at night. The nights are long, so there's a lot of time to make all kinds of things you shouldn't be doing. Okay, when the daytime, it's harder to sin because people see what's going on. At night, no one sees anything, so you think you're hidden. So Shovavim, that's what's called the parashot, and this is basically a fasting that is done in order to cleanse ourselves from various sins with the eyes and other things like that. Okay, speech. Okay, so maybe women don't have the same temptations as men do to look at things that they shouldn't look at. So the focus on Shovavim is no lamed hey.
Speech will mean
Lashon hara. Don't listen and don't talk it, right? That's not a great example because what is Shovavim? Shovavim is a person's going to fast. There's no requirement to fast for the next 6 weeks. It's extra. So in addition to guarding one's mouth from speaking Lashon hara, fasting on these again, I'm not saying everyone has to do that, Monday and Thursday, for the purposes of cleansing oneself from the sin of Lashon hara, right? That's called kadosh. Not speaking Lashon hara, that's a tzaddik. But fasting in order to atone for Lashon hara, that is called kadosh. That's another one. It's what it is the fact that you are, according to the Ramban, you are taking something that you are permitted to do and deciding, I'm not going to do that. That's what makes a person kadosh. Something that the Torah says, no problem, go right ahead, you can eat today, it's fine. I'm not going to eat today because I want to raise my level. That's what Ramban says is kadosh. The way you understand Rashi and the Ramban together is very simple. In areas of arayot, a person has to have extra stringencies that are above and beyond. Let's say a person, let's say a person is weak in a certain area. Generally, it's called the concept of to be machmir, to be stringent, right? Most people exercise stringency in places that they don't have problems. And that's not where one's supposed to exercise stringency. Where a person is supposed to exercise stringency is in areas where they do have problems. So if a person has issues with arayot, for argument's sake, then maybe what they should do is not look at the internet ever, because there's always a risk that something's going to come up and boom, boom, right? That's called kadosh. Now, some people would say having a phone, an iPhone, is already a rasha. I'm not sure we have that same level, but the idea there is what? I'm going to delete any apps on my phone that are going to give me content that is inappropriate. That would be something that is kadosh. Now, just because the phone has the content there doesn't mean I'm looking at it. But I don't want to get into a situation where I might look at it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a border for myself. Anyway, this is all of our service. Everybody knows their own stuff, the good stuff, the bad stuff, right? This is a place where we look in, and that's what it means to be kadosh. When a person has an area of weakness, and they say to themselves, I need to strengthen myself in that area by being more stringent, but not to command that stringent on anybody else. That's individuals, personal. That's why it's called kadosh. Okay?
And what's the name for me? Low level. What's my name?
What do you mean, what's your name?
What do they call me? I'm not Kadosh, I'm not Sadiq.
I don't know. You got to figure that yourself. I can't tell you that. Not, I got to worry about. Listen. This is no one should ever. Everybody should be a very generous critic for everybody else and a very tough critic for themselves. So I'm going to say you're a righteous woman because you're sitting in this class over here, and you're probably kadosh because we're learning amazing stuff. And that was what I'm saying, and that might be true. Only you know where the weaknesses are, right? Just like for the vice versa, the other way, right? This is called homie work. All right, coming back here. So we have the concept of the Brit Lashon, right? This is Pardes Rimonim. The Malchut is the peh, right? En hakavana shi kol hapeh. It's not the entire mouth. Ela hakavana petichat hapeh levad hi Malchut, which means just the opening of the mouth is considered to be the Malchut. Now, if a person's mouth is closed, I can move my tongue up and down, but there's nothing coming out. So in order to have the transfer from the mind to outside, the mouth has to be open. Malchut. Okay? כאילו נאמר שיפתח האדם את שפתיו אותו האוויר והפתיחה המתהווה בין השפתיים והפה. When a person wants to talk, you can get your lips, you can get your tongue and everything prepared, but unless you open your mouth, nothing comes out. So therefore, the peh, which is just the mouth, that is called the malchut. Omnam hasfatayim hi netzach v'hod, but the sfatayim are netzach and hod, because what they do is they cut the speech. The air that's coming out is cut by the lips. The lashon hamesov ben asfatayim, and the lashon, the tongue that is with the tongue, meshucha klape panim hu yisod. So basically, what he's trying to show is with the mouth itself, we have the concept of the sfirot as well. The peh is the malchut. The lips are netzach and hod. The tongue is the lashon. Lachen nikra lashon. Why is it called lashon? Why is it called lashon? Befiulat hadibur mityached hapeh im hagaron. Because when a person is speaking, right, in the action of speech, the peh, the mouth, is connected with the throat. Because ultimately, everything is coming from the larynx, correct? Ayidei halashon. Think about your tongue. How far back does the tongue go, doctor? Posterior, back into the back of the pharynx, correct? That's the tongue. So the tongue is what's representing the connection between the throat and the mouth. That's the yesod. What do we say the yesod is? The yesod is the connector. Okay? Shirosho echad ben asfatayim, because one aspect of the tongue is between the lip when you're saying different letters. Magia lapeh mamash virosho echad, right? It comes to the mouth. Magia lagaron shebo hakanesh u'atiferet, And the kaneh, which is the larynx, he says is the tiferet, the sphere of the tiferet. What does the tongue do? We have letters that are aleph, hey, ayin, het. Those are called the gronit letters. Those letters do not involve the lips. They don't involve the teeth at all, right? They only involve the garon, the pharynx.
Pharynx?
The pharynx, correct.
So they use the same word for shpita, the garon?
Yes. That dibur hu mitziut ruchani, and the dibur, the actual breath, is ruchani because it's ruach. What is when it says in the Torah that God blew into Adam's nostrils ruach chaim? Yes. What does Unkula say? What is ruach chaim? Ruach milalala, which means the ability to speak.
Oh, lemalel. Amalel is Aramaic.
Correct. So we see the Ruach Chaim that Hashem breathed into Adam was the breath and speech. All animals breathe, but not all animals have speech. Well, they have speech, but it's rudimentary. Ours is very sophisticated. Can I get, okay, but the dog doesn't say letters. There aren't 22 letters the dog can say.
They have rudimentary communication.
They have
And
rudimentary communication. They don't have
dolphins and whales.
5 different areas of cutting letters, right?
Whales have like really extreme sonar, different whales and dolphins, sonar and none of
Let me ask you a question. Do the whales in the Atlantic Ocean have a different language than the ones in the Pacific Ocean? No. Okay, it's the same language. Okay, unlike humans, which initially started with one language and separated to 70, but we had the capacity to have 70 languages or more nowadays, right? Keneged Asfirot K'mo Shebi'ar Agram b'Sefer Yetzirah, and the Gaon of Vilna has a perush on the Sefer Yetzirah, and this is explained in his perush on the Sefer Yetzirah. The Ruach Hayotze me'Adam Kolel b'Halichato Kol. The ruach that's inside the person is the kol, is the voice. The huk hanigrach al hakaneh, hanigrar al hakaneh. And the ruach, what does it do? It comes from the larynx, because the lungs through the larynx, yes? The ruach hu haruach shebe'emtza hakaneh. And between the kaneh, which is what? You have between the what is the larynx? The larynx are 2 pieces of tissue, right? But in the middle is where the wind comes. If it's closed, there's nothing coming out. Meaning it's how they are separating from each other, how they separate and how they flap. That's how a person speaks. It's a vibration. That's how you get sound. No vibration, no sound. If it's closed, there's no sound. What does this remind us of?
Speaker.
Come on, I'm looking for something else.
The magnet on a speaker.
Har Sinai.
Oh, Ru Mitakolot. Every song.
Har Sinai goes into detail in Parashat Yitro about the kolot, the voices. Yes? Because why? Just like the world was created with the sound, right? The world was created with sound. Similar, the Torah was given with sound. Okay? But what kind of sound?
Thunder, booming.
Torah.
Okay, shofarot. Okay, but let's think about this for a second. Did their ear ossicles vibrate when they heard the sound of Hashem's voice?
No, because there isn't.
They saw it.
Say what?
Chazeh with their.
Oh, what? Say?
I think they heard being scared.
They heard it where?
They were scared.
But where did they hear it? Did they hear it? Was there like a sound made that went into their ear, vibrated their eye? It says, V'chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot. Now, let's understand that. What does that mean, to see the voices? You can't see a voice. You can't see a sound.
Didn't they all leave their body?
Hold it before you get to there. You can't see a sound. We agree with that? Okay? Unless you have an oscilloscope. And that's not the sound. That's just the representation of this.
wavelength.
That's the electrical representation of the sound on a screen. But it's not the sound. What does it mean all the nations saw the voices? It's a way the Torah is telling us that this was prophecy, which means they heard it in their mind. Now let's understand something. You're hearing sound coming out of my mouth. It goes into your ear bones vibrate, and then the signal gets transmitted to the brain, and the brain ultimately is interpreting what you're hearing, which means everything technically is in the brain. What God does is when he communicates with people, he doesn't go through the ears, he goes directly to the mind. That's called prophecy. So the Torah is telling us they saw the voices, meaning what? It wasn't that there was noise from the outside. Everything was quiet. Everyone heard it on the inside, which is more scary than hearing it on the outside. Okay?
But then what's the thunder and the lightning and the sound?
Who says that wasn't heard internally?
Me too.
All right, everybody has to go.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to finish this paragraph in the meantime, okay? It's recorded, so if you want to listen to it afterwards, please do so. Yes, yes. Okay. Amen. Don't worry about it. I told you, it's my job to make it hard for you to go.
Welcome.
It's very much.
Baruch Hashem. Then I did my job. Have a good day, ladies.
Rabbi,
Yes.
you have a ride?
I'm sure I'm going to get a ride. Yes, you have a car?
I don't.
All right. You have? Okay, I'll get a ride. Thank you. All right, let's continue on. We'll finish this one, and then we'll have a good day. Have a good day. And that's the whole idea. How was the world created? The world was created with Asara Ma'amarot, right? But let me ask you a question. In order for there to be a sound, there's a whole discussion amongst the philosophers, okay? If a tree falls in the forest,
Nobody hear it.
but there's no one to hear it, was a sound made?
Nobody here.
Nobody hears it, there's no sound, right? Without a keli, without a utensil, there's no sound. So Asara Ma'amarot, once again, prophetically, okay? There was no keli to listen except for what God was creating. There was no human being.
Receiver.
Who's going to listen? Same idea. Okay. The ruach hu aruach shebe'emsa hakaneh, v'adibur hu pnimi, and the dibur is pnimi, is inside. V'yotzei achar כך b'chituch ha'otiyot. And then what happens? We have this the ruach coming out, but then the letters are cut by the tongue and by the lips and by all the actions that we have in our mouth. That's called speech. The hem shorashim leketer chokhmah bina, and that is the shoresh of the keter. So he's showing how all the 10 sfirot are contained with the whole process of speech. Zeran pim benukva ki haruach harishon hu shoresh chokhmah sheba nivra hakol, because the initial ruach is the hu shoresh habina, and is the bina. So we have the ruach, which is the air, and then we have sound. Air doesn't make sound when it's transferred. What makes the beginning part of sound is going to be the larynx, correct? Okay. Shoresh habina shu kol gadol ka'edua, v'ruach hu shoresh zer anpin ka'edua, and the ruach is the zer anpin, which is the 6 sfirot, domeh lechokhmah, similar to the chokhmah, v'dibur hu shoresh malchut domeh lebina, and the dibur is like the malchut, which is like the bina, because just like we have the feminine sfirah called the malchut, we have the feminine first three, keter chokhmah bina. The bina is the feminine that's in the top 3. Why is that the feminine? Because the Binah transfers everything that's potential, which is in the Gimel Rishonim, the first 3, into the world, which then is through the Binah into the world. Okay? Ayem bebiur agra. So and why is this so important? Why is the Kabbalah spend so much time discussing how the speech is all 10 sfirot? Why is it doing that?
Lashon hara. Lashon hara.
Meaning,
Defect of Lashon hara.
Lashon hara, it says, is worse than gilur arayot shfichut damin avodah zarah. Right? The sermon who's regularly speaking Lashon hara, it's worse than murder, adultery, and idolatry. Why? Because of this, what we just talked about, the sfirot. What you're doing, and when this person, God forbid, is speaking Lashon hara, is he's using these wholly different pieces of what Hashem gave us to do something that's a tremendous avon, that can kill people, that can people make them embarrassed and all that kind of stuff. That's why Lashon hara is treated so gravely, because it's involving the faculty that makes us human.
What separates us?
Separates from animals. Okay? Murder, lions kill all day long, but that's their nature. That's fine.
They do.
Well, a human being does it, it's bad because you're supposed to be overcoming your nature.
They're doing it for money.
Right? Animals don't generally have a concept of monogamy. Animals, whatever is available is available.
The dove.
Okay, that's the only, but most of them don't have a concept. Whatever's available is available, right? And animals really can't have no concept of worshiping God because they don't have the intellect to do that. So that's why those are low level. Again, they're tremendous sins for a human being to do, but it's not involving a higher faculty like speech. And the highest faculty is not allowed, right? All of this is imagery so we can better understand very sublime spiritual concepts. Okay? I have a couple moments. All right. In the Torah, it says, Yad tachat yad, regel tachat regel, ayin tachat ayin. Why does the Torah say that? We first of all, there was never a situation where someone took out someone's eye, we take out their eye. It's not. What do our rabbis understand from Har Sinai? That what? It's talking about payment, right? So let's ask the question. Why does the Torah not just say
Knas.
payment? If it wanted to say, it should say, if you take out someone's eye, you have to pay the value of that eye. Why can't it say it? So the simple answer is the Torah is giving us a very short. The goal is to study it so we understand better. But there's a sod. And this is what I meant when I said, if a person doesn't end the sod, they don't understand the peshat. What is yad tahat yad? Translate what that means. One hand is below the other. One arm is below. Tahat means below. Arm, eye below eye. Leg below eye. Yes? What does that remind us of? The spiritual world and the physical world. One being above, one being below. Which means, in this world, we have the concept of an eye. There is a spiritual concept of an eye. So in this world, ayin, tahat ayin. Our ayin is below the spiritual concept of the eye. Why are we given these items? So we can understand the spiritual world through our bodies. As we have a pasuk, mi besari eheze Eloah. From my flesh, I will be able to have a eheze, which means a vision of God. Which means by Avraham Avinu, by studying his body, that's how he understood about God. The deeper meaning of this is very simple. Which is created first, the spiritual world or the physical world?
This will be physical.
Which one? You say the physical world?
That's what happened with
Okay, how do you prove it? Prove it to me.
Adam but first, when Adam he made the body, then
Okay, but there were like 6 days that happened before Adam and Rishon. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, which is created first. Shamayim there doesn't mean sky. Sky is created on the second day. What does that pasuk mean? First is the spiritual world, that's the shamayim, and then is the physical world. Why is that? Because the physical world is the reflection of the spiritual world, which means first the spiritual world was created, and then the physical world was created. So now when I study the physical world, what do I get to understand? I can then begin to understand the spiritual world. Why is the physical world created? So I can understand the spiritual world. The spiritual world is more sublime. It's harder to touch. So the physical world helps me to understand the spiritual world. Yad tachat yad. When I understand the physical concept of yad, then I can understand the spiritual concept of yad. When I understand the spiritual concept of I can then understand the physical concept of I can understand the spiritual concept of I. So the Torah words it this way to teach us something deeper. Yes, it has an issue with how you pay and damages and all that kind of stuff. But the reason it's worded like that is to teach us the sod of the fact that the spiritual world the physical world is there for us to understand the spiritual world. That's what's yad tahat yad. The word tahat is used, which means under. It has a physical connotation of being under, lower, right? If it was not, it should really say, what do you mean tahat? It should mean equal. This is equal to this. That's not what it says. It says this one is below this. So we understand the simple meaning, and then we understand the sod meaning. All right. Any questions? Sorry? Okay,
Yeah,
very
I
good.
have a question.
Yes, please.
What is different between Haaretz and Adama?
Okay, let's think about that for a second. Both of them are feminine, right? Let's think of a pasuk with each one is there. Okay. Let's think about every time the word haaretz appears in the Torah, or the first one. When you say haaretz in the Torah, what is it talking about?
Usually Eretz Israel.
Land of Israel. Right? Always talking about haaretz.
Yeah, it's ha, so it's like
If it's haaretz,
So we say
Eretz, not. Eretz Mitzrayim.
Canaan.
Eretz Canaan. But when it's haaretz, it is the land. So you're asking about the word Eretz and Adama, correct? Okay. So let's think about that. How does the Torah use the word Adama? Continue. Where else? The idea of the Adama is giving something over.
You have to work it and it gives something to you.
Eretz, for instance, a desert can be Eretz. Eretz Gezerah. Right?
both of them is Eretz.
Hold on a second. I'm trying to answer your question. The Torah calls Azazel Eretz Gezerah. Give me chumash. El Eretz Gezerah. Right? Why is it called Eretz Gezerah? Nothing grows there. The concept of Adama implies what? That something can grow there. If you find an exception to what I said, then nafal kol hadrasha. But I think if you look carefully, you take a concordance, you look at the word Eretz, you look at the word Adama, you will see that Eretz applies just to land, whether it has fertility or not. Whereas Adama implies that there is something fertile, something is coming out. Right?
If this is the case,
Yeah.
why you say Hamsi lechem min haaretz? You don't say Hamsi
Very good.
lechem
Okay,
min
good. All right, he's asking good. Okay, so let's think about that. First of all, there's another bracha we don't say. Hamotzi lechem min hashamayim. Why not? Because we don't eat man. I would assume, even though I've never seen it in writing, I would assume that when the Jewish people collected the man, what's it called? Lechem min hashamayim, right? So therefore, man, the bracha one would have made is hamotzi lechem min hashamayim. Now, so therefore, the vis-a-vis is lechem min haaretz, number one. Number two, lechem doesn't come from the haaretz. What's required for lechem? What comes from the adama is chita. In order to get lechem, there are 10 human labors that need to be done, which are all forbidden on Shabbat. 10 forbidden labors in order to transfer it to the point where it is bread. Okay? So let's think about that for a second. Originally, was it like that? In the Garden of Eden, was it like that?
No, it was already made.
Meaning, we understand that the Garden of Eden, there were bread trees. Not breadfruit, bread trees. In the time of the Mashiach, it says that Eretz Yisrael is going to give forth trees with gluskaot, with loaves of bread. Okay? Why was there the 10 labors associated with making bread? Because of the sin of Adam Harishon. So Motzi Lechem min haaretz means, unfortunately, right now, the way we get our lechem is not from the Adama. It's from the Aretz, meaning what? First, we have to grow, the thing grows. That comes from the Adama. But then we have to produce it, which means the Eretz is not producing the bread. It's producing the source material for the bread, as opposed to Bore Pri Ha'adama.
Cucumbers ready.
It doesn't say Bore Pri Ha'etz, well, that's a tree. But it doesn't Bore Pri Ha'aretz, Bore Pri Adama, because the pri that we're eating is coming directly from the ground.
I mean, there's a lot of uses of eretz which are not having to do with, like when Hashem
Let's
is
think.
promising them eretz, whatever, they always use the word eretz.
There is a
Why Zavat Chalav Udvash?
Right, but, you know, I'm like eretz Asher, whatever.
Haaretz. They don't say Haaretz Asher Netadi. When they're talking about the land of Israel, when it says Haaretz, the land, then it's talking about the land of Israel. Usually, it's not going to refer with Hey HaYediyah to any other land but the land of Israel. If you think of another pasuk, let's. But why do? Okay, let's think about that. Why Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash? Why didn't it say Adama Zavat Chalav Udvash?
Because it's a
You
general
go to
term.
Eretz
It could be
Israel.
from the air, the sea, the whatever. It doesn't just mean actual, soil.
because you expect
Adamah has to do
in
with
Eretz
soil.
Israel not to have anything.
Right, desolate. That's the miracle, that it would flow with milk and honey, even though it's Eretz desolate.
Okay, milk and honey require processing.
Right?
But still,
Not direct.
The source for them has to come from the ground. The cow eats from the ground, and then milk is produced, which means there's a processing as opposed to direct. So when it's direct, then it would be Adama. When it's indirect, then it's Eretz. That's what I would say off the top, answering your question. But we have to think about the Pesukim that you're talking about, Pam. If you think about a specific Pasuk, like Haaretz, that's referring to the land of Israel. Eretz ochelet yoshvei, that's another example, right? Eretz, talk about the spies, what they said about the land of Israel. It's a land that eats its inhabitants, meaning what? There's something you're putting inside, right? It's not giving over anything directly.
to work on it.
Why'd you ask that question?
So an eretz is more like a location as opposed to, I think it includes the environment, not just.
Okay, I'm asking. Eretz is more indicative of the physical world.
Right.
Reshi Baralim et Shamayim et Haaretz, right? Be the physical world. Everything about the physical world is Eretz. I 100%. Adama is specifically land that is used for the growing produce. If there are exceptions to that, then maybe Nafal Kol Adrasha, I don't know. But you asked a question, I tried to give you an answer.
The homework is
Go take a concordance, look it up. It's your question, look it up. And then send me a pasuk that's not consistent with what I said. It's like yesterday I discussed about the concept of sikel. Very interesting word, sikel. What does sikel mean? Sikel yadav.
Oh yes.
That
Switch.
Yosef brought Menashe was the Bechor and put him on Yaakov's right hand. And then he put Ephraim, who's not the Bechor, put him on the left. Yaakov saw that Ephraim and Menashe were there. What does he say? Sikel yadav. He switched over his hands. So the right was holding on to Ephraim and the left was holding on Menashe. That's a very interesting word. What is another source of that word in the Torah? The word shachal. What is shachal? Lama eshkal. Rivka says, why should I lose both of my sons on the same day? Right? So God forbid when a parent loses a child, bar minan, lo aleinu, lo alechem, what is that called? Shachal. Why? Because it's not the proper way. It's overturned, which means what's supposed to happen is parents and then children pass, right? When it, God forbid, happens the other way, that's overturned. So we see the Hebrew, it's the same shore, the ideas contained within inside of the word. All right, we'll stop here. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.
Amen. Hazak Baruch. Beautiful.
Thank you for your hospitality.